Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Hangout between me and Jake, the INTP. Thank you so much for joining us again. We've had wonderful experiences so far in doing these Hangouts and talking about typology and answering questions from you guys. So it's a pleasure to be here again and to continue the conversation. So, Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, doing well. Just same old, same old. I made a video just to make myself not a liar before this one came out. It wasn't typology related, but I'll have a typology related video soon. It was just one of my old news videos. You told me before the week before we cammed up though that it was your first day of school. What year of college are you in?
I'm just going back to college now. I've gone to college a few times, but they've never really stuck with me. I've always been, having those uh, any crises of, am I doing the right thing? What am I doing with my life? Should I be doing this thing instead? I'm better at being a teacher than I'm at being a lawyer or a musician or whatever it is. But now I've settled to the thought of teaching and going back to college. So this is my third time back to college. Very excited. I'm pretty sure this time it'll stick because I've actually done some research into it. I haven't just jumped into it like I have before. And yeah, it's exciting. It's a lot of new information, a lot of new people to meet, which is great, but exhausting at the same time.
That's cool. Do you know, or do you get to pick? I don't know how it get to work. Like what age range you're focusing on, or do you have a particular educationally or professionally? Do you pick at this stage?
We do pick an age when we start to see which group we'd be more comfortable with teaching. I've chosen high school to. I'm more interested in it because I think it would be a challenge both professionally and personally to teach people in that age range, because I think I can sort of relate to those feelings that some of them are going through of looking for their identity, meanwhile trying to learn and figure out what to do in this world. So I think I have something to offer to that age range in particular.
That's a very difficult age range for sure. I don't think I would ever go older than. I don't even know if I would even go as old as middle school. I think the older kids get, the more annoying. They get more independent, and the more independent they get. So what do you need me for? Go do your own. Go make your own mistakes.
Definitely, yeah.
Not exactly a good attitude for a teacher to have. Go make your own mistakes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it depends on who looks at it too, because I find small children more annoying than children who are struggling with identity crises and figuring out who they are, simply because I have an easier time communicating with people who are in that age range. I find it frustrating that there's a sort of language barrier between grown-ups and kids, or at least there seems to be sometimes, not really being able to understand what they're feeling or what their problems are in a younger age range.
That is pretty interesting. I wonder if there's if there's something typological to that, because I do actually have a really easy time relating to kids. I mean, it's not hard for me to, like, if I need to, like, I know it might seem out of character to people who know me, but if I needed to, like, read stories to a group of kids, because I used to work at a bookstore, and sometimes you have to bind the kids section, and a lot of people, they just dump their parents just dump their kids in the kids section of a bookstore like it's a daycare. It's like, it's not a daycare, it's a commercial location. There could be it's next to the bathroom. There could be some weird guy walking in at any moment, But anyway, people would do that. But I don't know. I've never had a problem like getting on that frequency, I guess, because I've been a kid. If you can remember being a kid, you can kind of figure it out.
Yeah, I think there is definitely something to it being typological as well. I think FI communicates better with those that it can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. Like it's more of a, when you connect with people, it's more on a personal level based on personal experiences and whether you can put yourself in their shoes in that given situation and see how and the advice you then give is based on how you would react in the same situation.
Yeah, I do think it's where I think it would be make more sense to describe this in terms of FE, since it's more a personal relational thing. But even though I'm a TI dominant, but there's a calculation kind of thing where it's sort of like it is an abstract process where I'm like, well, you know, what do 3-year-old kids like, or what did I like when I was 5? Maybe it's a misfire too, you know. So hey, do you like dinosaurs? No. Oh, sorry. Well, what do you like? You know.
Yeah.
There's a way to get into some kind of that, I don't know, that small talk FE social interaction, even if it's like with a kid who can barely talk.
Yeah, I think kids are awesome for sure, but in a very different way. And I think it would be more awkward for me to try to teach them than kids are a little older. I'm very excited about it. We just got the study plan, the study guide for what we're going to do, and it seems very exciting. It's very well planned, and it seems cool. The teachers there are very
obviously there's a childhood psychology component to the education, I would imagine too. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of psychology to it, and I'm really looking forward to it. Interestingly enough, we'll be starting with culture studies first, and history studies, which I think is an interesting choice, because I think the psychology angle would be more intriguing to people in the beginning than the other angle. But I don't know. That's how they do it.
Maybe they're giving you the information that they know you'll need rather than the information you might expect you'll need, because that's where the problems, you know, when they get feedback from people, you know, and when you actually go out into the educational environment, maybe the problems are finding our cultural.
Yeah, that makes sense. That could be, yeah, learning to teach to different types of people. I can see that for sure.
I know you don't personally get that much into politics. Anybody who's looked at my channel for 5 seconds knows I talk about politics a lot. But do you guys have those domestic political strife issues? I know I shouldn't even be talking right now as an American about political strife, but you know, we do hear about sort of rightward turns in Europe too. Is that as big an issue in your country, or not as big an issue?
Not really. We have had some contested reforms of the school system these last few years, but I personally think it's pretty great, because it's more focused on, you know, one of the critiques you often get in a society like ours, which is very social democratic type of socialist society compared to yours, is that it caters to those who can't do as well, or those that aren't up to speed, more so than those who are up to speed and those who are better than what they're expected to be. So I think right now they're trying to fix the system, and they've released a new manifesto and some work group that said that the goal shouldn't be to cater to a specific group. It should be to make sure that every child gets to where their potential can lead them. And I think that's a wonderful mission statement, to say that, to focus more on the individual and less on the collective, and, you know, that personal growth is subjective, and that it's more complex than just getting everyone through school. I think that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of competing philosophies in education in America, but I think that would be a big tangent. I don't want to go down that line. But let's talk about typology specifically, and maybe some of the stuff that we didn't get into earlier, which is, I guess, a more, you know, in-depth look at the INTP or the ENFP. So who do you think? Who would you rather dissect first?
Let's go for the INTP, because that's always been fascinating to me.
Okay, the INTP. I do think TI isn't really that well understood by non-TI users, which is sort of a mystery
to. I think it is kind of a mystery to TE users, simply in the way that it works in and of itself, because it is an introverted function. It's very hard to perceive what it looks like, or how it is. How it's present in the mind of the user, in much the same way that introverted feeling is a hard feeling to get a hold of if you haven't experienced it yourself. Yeah, it's the way I see it. It's like so many other introverted feelings, that it's a framework system. It's an internal computer almost, that works in sorting information. And connecting things to make them make sense.
I think a lot of that kind of process does get clouded up in the extroverted intuition part of it, especially with INTPs, because I'm trying to think of how ISTPs operate a little bit more. But I don't know that I haven't carried that many social relationships with ISTPs past high school. I just don't know that many well enough, that much personally. But where was I going to go? Oh, the sort of every time I have like a primitive vision, like my background unconscious introverted intuition is working, doing whatever it does, I get visions of like a lot of digging and a lot of disintegrative processes when I think about introverted thinking. And often I imagine introverted feeling as magma. Sometimes, an active volcano, sometimes a dormant volcano, but there's definitely just this hot stuff dwelling underneath the surface at all times, coursing into itself and melting and changing temperature and pressure at all times,
That's a wonderful analogy. Yeah, there's definitely something to it, especially looking from the outside. I always saw that especially INTPs, I have a feeling that you can't really tell an INTP to do something and expect them to do it. Everything that an INTP does is sort of, and this is me speaking generally, of course, is something that they want to do at their speed. And then when they do it, they're great at it because they've collected all this data and they've made these connections, but it can take a while for them to actually do something. They don't feel the need to take what they have in their mind and take it out into the actual world as soon as possible, like someone like me with extroverted thinking does, where it's more important to them. It's more important that they know they can do it, or it's more important that they have the idea, and that's in some way fine for them.
Yeah, I was definitely going to say that sounds like that's very much coming from an extroverted thinking observation, or like an extroverted thinking perspective, because I was going to say that I'll like down the line, because I was going to say, if you look at FE, I've noticed, or at least even in interactions with FE users, or I know their type because it's in typology communities, or in typology chats, is FE does have a way of cajoling TI or coaxing TI to respond to it in a way that TE's commanding approach is just sort of like grasping water, and it's just like it just goes between your fingers, like you're not getting anywhere with this process.
Yeah, that's true. It really does depend on the placement of the functions, whether feeling is above or below thinking. That has a big say in how introverted and extroverted thinking works and how it presents itself. Like how people who have thinking above feeling might tend to complain more about their situation, and feelers are more aware of not wanting to upset other people that way, perhaps, or more convinced that it would negatively affect other people by doing so.
Yeah, it is interesting. If you just look at the judgment functions in isolation, with you and me, you have TI and FI over FE and TE. And I think that maybe that could be why, like I said before, I'm in a long-term relationship with an INFP, another FI user, why I don't get, and I've said before, I don't get in arguments that much with other introverted judgment dominants. There might not be as much force being exerted, you know what I'm saying, on those kind of pairings, in a way that if you did have TE over FI, those tendencies of me not acting on everything that I say or do, even when it's could be potentially profitable, it just it would annoy you to the point where you would have to say something or do something about it.
Yeah, T does really change depending on where it is in the functions, because it is a very hard-headed function, and you see that a lot with extroverted thinking DOMs. I think the very sort of focused, practical usage of the world, where it's, I'm going to do this because I want this. But so it's very uncompromising. But the further down it gets, it changes and becomes more adaptable to the other functions. And in my case, subjugated to intuition and feeling. Yeah, but it's still a very important function, no matter where it is, of course, whether you favor introverted or extroverted function, just based on how you gather information, whether you need to, complete an entire framework before you act on something, or whether you look up information instantly and then act on it more impulsively. So those are, to me, kind of the overarching themes of introverted and extroverted thinking.
I just realized we're probably veering again. We're using our too much extroverted intuition. INTPs is still the subject that we're working with. So I don't know. I don't want to. I almost don't want to talk about extroverted intuition as much, because I feel like it can be difficult with NEDOMs and you know, INTPs or INFPs. It gets all kind of mixed up sometimes. But I think for introverted sensation, there might be enough differentiation there between the other functions and even you and me, where that might be interesting. I do think that having introverted sensing higher up compared to extroverted intuition DOMs, the ENTP and the ENFP, I definitely know that it's almost like we just have, it's like we actually have bullets in our gun, and you guys are shooting blanks and you're just pretending the whole time. You have the real gun, but it doesn't really have bullets in it, and you're just going to talk your way out of the situation, so you never have to shoot it anyway. But we will try to do that too, but just in case, we know these are actually live rounds. We actually got something in the gun.
Yeah. To me, I feel like introverted sensing pops up when I don't expect it, but it's always there in the back of my mind. Like, I'm really good with remembering numbers or charts or just random facts.
How much of that is intuition, though? You know,
No,
how much of that is stuff that could carry you through Jeopardy or something?
Well, still, it's highly connected with the framework of SI and the past experiences and what you've taken from the past and then put it into the now as a way of dealing with the now, instead of going for the information itself is picked up by any, but the SI is like I see it as like a mainframe of information in the corner that feeds the NE and the FI. But
yeah, I still work on it myself, trying to differentiate those contents that are SI, because I also think they're polluted in the case of both of us by the functions above them, and so we're not really getting a pure experience, a pure introverted sensing experience. So maybe we can try to get a third wheel, somebody who's actually in, and we have a few STJs. We have a surprisingly large amount of STJs in the chat. Let's see if we can get one of these guys to actually do a Google Hangout. We won't make them show their face if they don't want to.
No, but shout out to you guys. You're awesome.
Yeah,
yeah. A wonderful new ISTJ who just joined recently, and it will be great to interview an ISTJ. I don't know how I would necessarily identify an ISTJ if I saw one on the street, because like you, I don't know that many. ISTJs.
I actually think my dad might be an ISTJ. If I were to,
right, you said ISTP. That's right. Yeah.
No, I think he's definitely an ISTJ. He's definitely not an ISTP. We would have a lot more in common if he was an ISTP.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I think we should bring people in. That would be interesting to bring some guests in about their types and talk to them about their types.
For sure.
What do you guys think? Leave a comment.
Absolutely. Comment below. We're coming close to 20 minutes. So let's talk about extroverted feeling very quickly, and then maybe next time we can talk about ENFPs in depth. Extroverted feeling, I call it the NTPs and the STPs, when you have to TI over FE, is just enough FE to troll. Like, we have enough, we know the mores, but we have a mild to high level of contempt for them. And you can't, you have the greatest contempt for that which you're familiar, right? Not the unfamiliar as much as it's the things you know that you hate, that you really hate, because they're actually present in your life regularly. We don't know that we're subconsciously attracted to FE because that's how TI kind of meets its pairing. But I do know that I have a quote unquote appreciation for FE much more than my girlfriend. I just did backwards quotes. Appreciation for extroverted feeling than my INFP girlfriend, and there are some levels of extroverted feeling that I actually don't like, but I know would annoy her because it's so clearly like FE. So like, but musicals is the archetypical example. I don't think she'll ever be able to appreciate or understand musicals.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've always that kind of NTP trolling is hilarious to me. I love Norm Macdonald, for instance, and Frank Zappa, who were just amazing. Frank Zappa was, and Norm Macdonald still is, think, are very good at playing down to the crowd just for the hell of it, not really caring about appearing smart or dumb, but just doing something because they think it's funny. And I even think Norm Macdonald said that David Letterman was the best comedian of all time because he realized that nobody liked the smart guy. And I see it as sort of, it's the same vein, you know, trolling and appearing less intelligent than you are for your own amusement.
Right.
It's super fascinating to me, and I'm not sure I understand it, but I think if it's done right, it's hilarious.
Well, I think that TI will like boil things down to very simple conceptions, almost like a caricature or a comic strip or an equation or just something that's very reduced to its least amount of constituent parts. And then we'll sometimes, you know, I don't know, play with that as an idea. And what comes out of that is this, I don't know, this two-dimensional kind of vision or two-dimensional behavior. But I guess it can fool people. It amuses us when it fools people. There's nothing better, obviously, than getting someone on the hook and just, you know, playing with that line.
Right, which is so interesting to me because I think one of the reasons I find it so funny is because it's so liberating to me to see it, because I think TE secretly wants to be seen as an authority figure at all times, even in ENFPs and INFPs. So there's this fear of appearing dumb or appearing like you're out of control of a situation, because you want people to take you seriously. You want people to take what you're saying seriously, and you can't look stupid, because what if they then start to think you're stupid? And this whole line of thing starts going. And I think it's so brave when people dare to actually appear or dare to look like what am I trying to say? Trying to look like they are
there's something
less than they are.
You know, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's I think the darker component to it is that we have no crisis of confidence, and that's what's really behind it, is we're just messing around because we secretly, in our heart of hearts, know that we're smart or something like that, you know? And that's just, you know, and I was trying to think about how does that manifest in ENTPs and ESTPs? And I think usually when the rubber hits the road on something that gets overly logical or overly, they just stop caring about it and recourse to the actual, you know, reality or their real world life or their experience or their competences. But I think it's just fun to play with those. It's just fun to play with those ideas, because it's kind of what we're doing anyway in private, and we do also care big time, I think, about being taken seriously or about being seen as an authority, but it's always in that narrow introverted respect. And maybe you can appreciate that as an introverted feeler, comparing yourself to extroverted feeling, where you don't always care what you do that you think is valuable, that's socially acceptable. You like it when there's a cross section, but at the end of the day, you're going to stand for what you appreciate in the world rather than what's people are telling you is what's valuable.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. You definitely hit the nail on the head there with introverted feeling and introverted thinking, in that it's wonderful when you're being validated, but it's more important that you're staying true to yourself and what you think and who you want to like you as well.
Yeah, and so I guess that's it. And that just like an introverted feeling can vary from FI user to FI user. Two TI users will disagree. Two INTPs will disagree fundamentally on a lot of things. You know, pretty much everything. Actually, I would imagine if there's an idea, there's an INTP representing that idea, and that idea is incompatible with all the other ideas that it's incompatible with, and that's, you know, what we like to do. We like to fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on 25 minutes. Oh, you're going to say something?
No, I was just going to say INTPs have always fascinated me, in that I've never really been able to get a grasp on how much they feel for things, because I know there's this FE deep in them extroverted feeling that gouges other people, but I've never been quite sure at figuring out what what they use extroverted feeling for specifically.
When you say gouges, what do you mean?
What?
What do you mean by the word gouges? Could you give an example or go into more detail?
No, just how do you how do you use extroverted feeling? Do you use it to to understand other people to benefit yourself, or do you use it to understand other people and try to use your information to help other people, or is that a side effect of what you do? It's very fascinating to me how the INTP is made up of this very heavy introverted thinking and this very heavy extroverted intuition, and feeling is all the way pushed down. So it's one of those mysteries to me that I get on paper, but it's always fascinated me in how it actually looks.
I think it's like if if FE colored the world, then like TI would be what the little key in the corner that tells you what all the colors represent. And so it's like when you're on the other side of that equation, and I don't think every INTP is aware of this, especially if they don't know. If you're a person who is an INTP who does not know about typology, you have no idea that this is constantly informing the background of every single thing that you do and you think. You might style yourself as a pure rationalist or something like that, but there would be too many examples of things that are sociologically driven or socially driven that are just inexplicable from a pure rational perspective. These aren't things that that pure reason would lead one into. These are categories of human interest. And I think that those categories of human interest that TI and introverted thinking observations always seem to stem from and lead into are representative of the background that extroverted feeling, that extroverted feeling exerts, and the sort of constant, it's constantly there. And it's and so that's why it's hard for me to answer the question in a specific way. Yeah. And it becomes more apparent, and it becomes more muted because I don't have to engage that part of myself as much when I'm talking to an ENFP, because they're not engaged in that way at all. But it still has something to do with the way I'm observing you, and the way what the things that you're saying and what they imply to me, and including misinterpretations and me thinking that you mean one thing when you actually are trying to talk about something else and you're focusing on a different aspect of things. I think all that stuff is attributable to that latent subconscious and suppressed extroverted feeling, because like you said before, the introverted thinking process isn't being expressed. That's just how all the parts are being moved around inside my head. But what are the parts when we're talking about thinking about the world? Those parts are gathered by my intuition and colored by my feeling process invariably. Oh, that's a completely different alarm. There's nothing to do with our our talk, but I forgot to turn it off. But yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So would you say it's sort of like a hidden preoccupation and fascination with other people in this kind of very thinking, intuitive way of living, that it's almost like the starting point for all thoughts is based on other people and how they are and how they act, perhaps?
Well, I think in the example of Carl Jung, who did identify himself as a person who's dominated by thinking to, get as close to the direct phrase as possible, I think the actual artifact that is Jungian typology is a great example. It's a perfect example, because what you have is a highly ordered, highly defined, highly systematized and rationalized system about how people act.
Yep.
And so all of that stuff is you can see it's extraordinarily distorted kaleidoscope with which to look at a human being from, I would imagine, the perspective of a feeling type. But to a thinking type, this stuff is very digestible.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
that is true. Yeah, so it is like a hidden strength that lies in the darkness, or in the dark.
Yeah, especially if you know that it's there, you can get a lot more leverage when you know where the ground is and where you know where you can plant your feet. and knowing the difference, and knowing that that's where the introverted thinking process is rooted. And it can be much more apparent if you know the other person's type and they're an introverted feeling type, how much less they give a shit about social things. Because even STPs and NTPs, we still give a shit about what other people think about us. We are still socially aware and socially anxious in that way that all FE using types are on some level.
Yeah. I think, there's definitely a lot of anxiety in FI too, but it's presented very differently. It's more of an internal struggle to figure out who you are compared to the external struggle of what other people think of you. But there's definitely still a struggle for sure. Yeah.
All right, so we'll do ENFP next time.
Yep, sounds good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for watching. If you're out there, this is part 4, I believe.
Part 4. Yep.
I would call it episode 4 in New Hope, but I don't want to get in any trouble with anybody. I got no strikes on my account, and I don't want to start now.
Well, we're good. We're good.
All right. Thanks, Peter, for hanging.
Thank you. And check out our channels. We've got some new videos up. Jake's got a video about the current troubles in the US, and I continue my search for Soflo Antonio on my channel. Videos are a lot of fun to
oh yeah,
film.
your new video is very cool. You I love the cinematography. It's a very awesome thing. That's your first attempt at doing a kind of montage video, right?
Yeah, it's me going back to the tricks of film school and using some of them in a cinematography and narration way. It's fun. It's a fun group of videos to make, and I have a few more coming over the next while.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to do my intuition presentation, which will be very boring because I did not go to film school, but it looks like we still have a lot to talk about next time. So thanks, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.